Good morning. Good morning. I don't know what we should talk about this morning. I've been flooded with ideas. A lot of things I've been thinking about that I have not thought about in a long time. And there are terms and words, things that I don't remember that I wish I could remember. But I know that those things will come back to me and I'll be able to tell you about them. The wind's been blowing very hard. Um, who do we have to thank for that? Well, there is some weather manipulation going on. There's some incredible machinery out there. And one of the things I want to convey to you is there's so much that we don't know that this government is doing. I don't even think the Congress knows about a lot of this stuff. I don't think there's any oversight for much of it. I remind myself, what is it that is important for you to know today? Well, it's April 8th, Friday morning. It's going to be a big day. We have 11 days left. It's 11 days warning you have before something major happens, and it's going to be in the financial realm. Whatever it is, it's going to be lasting for about a week, according to Cliff High. I think Cliff has dug up a lot of things in the past that haven't come to full fruition, haven't come to pass. But I also think that when we sleep at night, the dreams that we have, I think, are the different future possibilities. And if you've ever heard of string theory, it basically holds that, I guess it's basically an analogy. As I recall, we get a string vibrating, and there's nodes of vibration. When they vibrate with enough energy, wildly enough, you form nodes along the string, and gradually there's waves in the string. And when they get energized enough, these strings start vibrating and becoming spherical shape, like circles, like balls, like planets, like future possibilities. So there's a good likelihood that we are dreaming the future possibilities, working things out for ourselves at night. Now, it has been claimed, they even made a movie about this, that we live in a matrix. We live in a giant computer program. How could that be true? How could we make that true? Under what circumstances? What evidence do we have? Well, the oldest language on the planet appears to be Akkadian. It appears to be binary. The cuneiform, lines and slashes, zeros and ones. Okay. As we know, computer language is pretty doggone complicated. As simple as it is at its roots, it's extremely complicated and well organized. And those people who don't know what code is, code probably looks very random. Likewise, the events that you and I experience every day appear to be very random. Things happen. Things alert us. Things wake us up. Gee, that reminds me of something. Have I been here before? Deja vu. Did I have a dream about this? Did this occur in my dreams perhaps 6 weeks ago? That's been my lead time, in case you're wondering. So when those moments occur, we get disturbed because, my God, I've been here before. What's next? and then we interfere with the dream or with the continuity of the path that we were on. And then there's these wild things that happen to us, and we think that's by accident. And then years down the road, we look back at it, or I do anyway. That wasn't by accident. And many times, things happen that anger me, and I get really upset about it, only to realize the necessity for it a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades down the road. So, that thing that had happened to me was so bad at the time, I never forgot about it, or it was so painful, I couldn't think about it, and I suppressed it, repressed it, pushed it down out of my consciousness because it was too painful to think about it. And then we look back at it sometimes with new perspective, new insight, new wisdom. We've grown. And we realize that it was for good, not for evil. That reminds me of the story of Joseph. Gets sold into slavery to some passing Ishmaelites. Take them down into Egypt. Long time later, his brothers show up looking for food. And he doesn't reveal himself to them initially. Folks, you got to remember, the Hebrews didn't shave. They were proud about their beards. They had full beards. That's the way it was. That is also a sign of an Israelite, of a Hebrew, a descendant of Heber or Eber. They spoke the Hebrew language. Hebrew does not equivocate to Jew. The Jewish religion did not exist until after the Babylonian captivity. The Israelites came back. They returned from Babylon after 70 years in exile. They had changed. They had adopted the ancient practices in Babylonia. Anyway, we've got some other evidence that we might be living in a matrix. And of course, wouldn't there be software? Wouldn't there be hardware? Might that software be us, or are we the hardware? Abel's blood cried up from the ground, from the earth to Yahweh. How could it cry? It must have had a memory. So is blood hardware or software? Blood has the life in it. The life is in the blood. We're told you can eat the meat, or you eat the meat, but you don't eat the blood. You don't consume the blood. That was kind of a standing rule, almost a law. It was like it didn't even need to be written down. It was like it was so much of a part of the culture. So what do we do when we butcher an animal? When we clean an animal? We drain the blood. We get rid of it. Blood will spoil a little bit quicker. But we don't drink it. Well, okay, there is gravy. But I think that's a violation of Yahweh's law. If we look at the Bible, probably shouldn't be having gravy. Boy, I do miss biscuits and gravy. Not supposed to eat pork, not even supposed to touch it. Okay. Why pork? Why that in particular? What about those Greek myths? Wow. Men got turned into pigs. Pigs got turned into men. They got changed back and forth like magic. So, how close to pigs are we? Pretty close sometimes, huh? And we even call those who clean us up and keep order among us and come to our rescue once in a while, we call them pigs too. Great. Pigsty, piggery. One of the things that shocked me when I was a little boy coming home from Europe is how dirty the place was. I mean, the litter just appalled me. The trash in the ditches along the roads. Folks, there's no litter in Europe. At least there wasn't back when I was a little boy. Oh, Italy wasn't quite as clean as Germany was. The Germans were extremely anal. Everything was meticulous. It was groomed. It was in order. They took good care of things. They had a lot of pride. Stolz. They were better than us. Sorry. And then some of these folks from Asia, they're better than us too. Some of them are wonderful. Gee, when I went to United States International University, which had the largest foreign undergraduate body at an institution of higher education in the United States, it was wonderful. I had a lot of friends. I had a lot of fun. I mean, I was hanging out with people from different countries. It was a rich environment. And we talked. Oh, my Lord. I think that was the best part of the education at times. We would engage in debates. And we made fun of each other because some of us brought the characteristics of our people with us, of our countries with us. And it was amazing. I mean, I remember debating with one gentleman. Where was he from? I think he was from Africa. Man, he was brilliant. He was a perpetual student. Why? Well, it turns out that if he had gone home, they probably would have killed him. So he was always changing his major and extending his student visa. I don't know how many doctorates he actually earned there. I don't know. Zane, what was your last name? It was funny because Zane and I debated. Usually we started when the sun was up. And we'd go into the dark late at night and a bunch of other students would hang out around us. And I guess we were entertainment for them. And Zane could dance circles around me. I mean, intellectually, he was a deep thinker. He was well-read, well-dressed, quite a fellow. And Zane, wow. He and I would debate things, and we would take sides. And the crazy thing is that we usually change sides. And we didn't realize it till later on. So we would start out arguing from one position, and then we would argue from the other one's position. And it was wonderful. Now, there were a lot of things that we never settled, but we walked off refreshed. It was like the rain had fallen. It was like the air was cleared. We were new. We were fresh. That's the importance of being able to talk openly. I mean, it was invigorating. It felt wonderful. I didn't want to go to bed. I didn't want to go to sleep. I was having a good time. Of course, on that campus, it was kind of interesting. We had some big bats hanging out down there. A lot of beautiful trees, and the flowers were just incredible. And the smell of the flowers was wonderful. I mean, at night, wow. That reminds me, the smell of the flowers in Tupelo when the honeysuckle was blooming. Oh, geez. And the smells of the flowers in Chandler. I mean, when the orange blossoms bloomed, and we had honeysuckle as well, and it would just waft over. The light breeze would just bring it by, and you smell it. It's just, oh, it was wonderful. It was heavenly. Did you know that smell and taste are some of your last senses as you're dying, as you're towards the end of your life? The sense of smell and taste comes back very strong. Food never tasted greater. It's almost as if you didn't want to leave. It's almost as if there was a rebirth. My buddy in Upper Kalskag, up in the village in the interior of Alaska, a black fellow, in case you're wondering, if that makes any difference. Well, I guess it does in a way. I think he was the only black guy in the village. I think I was the only white guy. And one of the things I did as a village counselor, as I went up to the health clinics and hung out with the village health aides. Always did my best to shore them up. We shored each other up. And Upper Kalskag was quite different than Lower Kalskag. And this fellow, I mean, he was glad to see me, and we had good long talks. And one of the things he confided in me was that he had taken care of a lot of natives that had cancer, and a lot of them. And he was burnt out. I mean, he had post-traumatic stress disorder, if you will, from taking care of these folks, and he took good care of them. He was extremely dedicated. I admired him tremendously. Well, there was another thing about Upper Kalskag is the missionary was up there, another white guy. I hung out with him too, and there were some school teachers there as well, and they tended to be whites brought in from the outside. Hung out with them a little bit. They weren't nearly as much fun as hanging out with the village health aide, or the local missionary. Some incredible tales. The reason that there were so many deaths were because of the PCBs that were in the soil from the old missile site upriver. And that stuff causes cancer, and it caused a lot of cancer for the natives. And he said that each one of them, towards the end of their lives, their sense of taste would suddenly come back. Food tasted wonderful. And that was something that he observed. That's how I learned that. From the missionary there, I learned that the Kennedys were not that nice of a group of people. And I remembered what my mother told me when I was a little boy. And I didn't understand what was meant by open relationship when I was 10 years old. But anyway, my mother mentioned very casually in passing that they have an open relationship like it was nothing. It's just hard for me to believe that my mom would have said that back then. Yeah, Mom was a piece of work, all right. And what the missionary told me was Jackie's reputation wasn't very good. And she hung out in Chicago with a couple of goons who protected her. Not going to go much more into that. I might tell you about that story sometime. I just don't think that's important. Wallowing in the mire of other people is not that important. It certainly doesn't help us to get along with our neighbors. It does help us to protect ourselves, to be aware of where the danger is, to be aware of other people's bad habits so we don't get sucked in, so we don't get seduced. That's important. Mind your P's and Q's. That's important. Mind your P's and Q's. Where did that come from? Well, obviously it came from our learning as we're learning the language and we would reverse our P's and turn them into Q's, and Q's and turn those into P's. Dyslexia, if you will. I did a lot of testing. Boder reading test. Did the Bender Gestalt as well. And what everybody kept turning out was they were dyslexic, remediated dyslexics was the diagnosis that I got almost all the time. I finally, at this point, come to the conclusion that it's just natural to reverse things as you're learning and as you're growing and you're learning a language, and you have to practice it. And reading, at least for me, it's like a muscle. If I don't read for 6 weeks, I have to learn all over, start all over. I have to start slowly and build up gradually, and then I get some more speed. I used to read at tremendous speed. President John F. Kennedy was noted for reading at tremendous speed. I read quite well, and I remembered quite a bit, a lot of what I read. The problem is that we go faster, and we do cover more ground, and we can remember more, but it seems as though there's a threshold at which we exceed, we just don't remember as well. If you want to learn something, nothing works quite as well as to rewrite it, writing it, handwriting, handwritten notes. That's why penmanship was so important. My penmanship was great in early 3rd grade. It was great till I transferred from Bad Nauheim to Butzbach in Germany. My teacher was Miss Johnson. I remember her. She wasn't a nice lady. She had accepted a position in Europe so that she could travel Europe. She wasn't a very dedicated teacher. She wasn't very nice to me. It was a crowded classroom. We had Quonset hut for our classes. Recently, my childhood buddy and I were talking, and he reminded me of some of those days. I got to talk with him more. I really do. I want to remember those days a little bit better. But Miss Johnson didn't like me, and she wouldn't let me. She wouldn't even let me go. We didn't have a bathroom in our Quonset hut. The bathrooms were in the main building, so we had to walk outside, go over to use the bathroom. And she didn't like me, and she wouldn't let me go. She was mean to me. She punished me, and she didn't like my spelling test very much, and she would start off and she would put an F on the first page and a minus, 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 minus in red ink all the way across the page, turn the page, and the minus kept going. Gee, I never thought about Miss Johnson having problems, but do you think she had some problems? Yeah, she had some problems, and she caused me problems. And I'd get sent down to the principal's office. And I'd be pretty upset because I didn't want my mom upset. And Mom would get called into the principal's office. And of course, I was pretty small. You sit on the chairs and your legs are swinging off the end because your feet don't touch the floor. They touch the ground. I was pretty tiny. And I would sit there while my mother and the principal were talking, waiting to get reamed, waiting to get chewed out, waiting to find out what I did wrong. Maybe I knew what I did wrong, but the two ladies would talk, and then we would walk out, and that was it. It got to the point where I liked going to the principal's office because things were going to go good. Mom was going to come in, talk with the principal. The principal was a woman. I guess that was rare back then. I don't know. It seemed like all of my teachers were women at that time. Weren't many men in the profession. By the way, I think it was probably before World War II. There were more, it was men teachers in the profession. No, there were female teachers, that's right. Well, yeah, there were female teachers before World War II. And the seventh plank of the was the Democratic Party or Republican Party? Which when I was president? Hell, my grandmother made sure that I would learn this lesson. She was a devout Republican. Member of the DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution, Piscataqua Pioneers. The seventh plank of the New Deal was the law of the land for 7 years until the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional. And that held, it's after World War I now that I think about it, that held the seventh plank, which I don't know if it was by law or by executive order. A married woman was not permitted to work outside of the home unless her husband was determined to be medically infirmed. In other words, she wasn't able to go out and work anymore. Why did they do that? The men came back from the war and they wanted the men to have work. So the women who were working in the factories at the time, and my grandmother worked in the bomb factory, and it was heavy work, it was heavy work. It was men's work. Is it Rosie, the riveter, whose real name was Naomi, by the way? She really existed. Native American woman at that. I saw pictures of her. She was really beautiful. She really existed. She was actually kind of a skinny, petite thing. She ran a machine. She was a machinist, and she did excellent work. From what I understand, she was pretty hot. And she worked the whole day. I don't think there were 8-hour days back then. I think it was a 12-hour day. I think it was sun up to sunset. Anyway, my grandmother was a teacher. And because of the seventh plank of the New Deal, she wasn't allowed to work outside of the home anymore. She was required to stay home. She was college educated. Not many women were college educated back then. She graduated, I think it was 1917. Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts. My great-grandfather was big on education, and all of his children were going to college. Every one of them went to college. The 3 girls all went to college. One was Aunt Carolyn. She had a son named David. David was over 6 feet tall. He was big and handsome. He got all the attention of the girls. That's okay. I know. I was only 5'6" when I graduated high school. I grew a lot more after that. Anyway, I think what you need to know is that our history is richer than what you could imagine. Sadly, the saying, the devil is in the details, is correct. Women weren't allowed to work so that men could get the jobs after they came home from the war. And that was important. And of course, the schism between men and women grew greater because of that war. And also because of that. I mean, ladies, how would you feel today if you were told you can't work outside the home? You take care of your family, unless your husband is if he's disabled, and we got a doctor's permission slip. Hate those guys. We got a doctor's written permission slip that says that you can go to work because your husband is disabled, medically infirmed. Then you can go outside and you can earn a living for the family. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that happened, folks. What you need to understand, I don't know what's really important today for you. I wish I could tell you. I've just been going with the stream of consciousness. I won't even remember much of what I've told you, except I will listen to this because this will remind me of the other directions that I wanted to take this in, that I wanted to go in, the other realities, if you will, the other parts of the string of string theory, the other dreams, the other future possibilities. Yes, folks, we can change our futures. You can change your behavior. You are a co-creator. You're not that separated from Creator Father. You really aren't. That idea that there's a divine spark inside of you, it's kind of a myth. It's kind of the Western point of view. The Eastern point of view, on the other hand, is that the electricity surrounds you. It's like you're walking in a cocoon, if you will. There's an electromagnetic force field. In case you're wondering how big it is, it gets pretty big on some of us. Some of us aren't so big. And you don't want to let just anybody in that. How big can it get? Well, I don't see them. I have seen them. Siri Singh Sahib, Yogi Bhajan, he certainly saw them. At least he claimed to. Would you ever wonder why those old castles in Europe had such high doors? I mean, the doors were wide, tall. I mean, why did they have to have those big gates? Well, they might have had war machinery, weaponry that they had to roll in and roll out. Okay. They rode horses, all right. But even inside the castle, some of those doors were real big. Was that to accommodate a man's aura? Or maybe to accommodate angels? Who knows? What is an angel? Do they really have wings? My guess is this. When an angel leaves his first estate and falls, comes to the earth, he gets to take on one of these bodies as well. So at that point, he's one of the fallen ones, and he's not exactly working for Yahweh. However, it's even said that the devil works for Yahweh. He just doesn't realize it. That's what Pastor Jerry Wicke said. I do miss him. So what is the purpose of them? Well, one of the purposes is to sift us. However, it's clear that they've exceeded their license. They weren't supposed to kill us. And that's what they're doing, folks. That's what they do. So how do they kill us? Slowly. Subtly. They put stuff in your food. Oh, yes. They put stuff in the metal in your pans that you use to cook with. They put these metals in there that accumulate in the body over time, weaken the body. According to one woman, the cure for all cancers, she believed that we needed to deworm ourselves, that we had parasites. When's the last time you dewormed yourself? When's the last time you had treatment for parasites? Why is it that modern medicine doesn't do that? I mean, we deworm the dogs. We take better care of our animals than we do our people. Why do they leave out that particular type of treatment and all for us? I don't even think they work it up very much. Do we need to be dewormed on a regular basis? Sure seems like the dogs needed to be dewormed. Our medical profession is controlled just like everything else, pretty much from the top down. They're dictated, they're told what to do. They're not our doctors. They're beholden to others, beholding to their licensing boards, beholden to big pharma, above all, beholding to those that gave them power. Oh, by the way, the income tax, when it started, was on medical doctors, and they volunteered 1% of their incomes. They had a fit the next year when it doubled to 2%. I mean, medical doctors volunteered for an income tax because by paying homage to the king empowered them. Do you understand that principle? By paying off the authorities empowered them. Is that a fair transaction? Is that fair for the rest of us who are not empowered? And what did they do early on? What did the Rockefellers do? They made all other health practices illegal. They didn't just, they put them in jail, folks. Put them in prison. We had all kinds of practitioners. Chiropractic, that was illegal for a while. Herbologists, herbalists, I guess that's still illegal, unfortunately. Why is that? Why are we not allowed to have treatments that aren't based on poisons and toxicity? Why are we not allowed to use every leafy green plant for medicine? The Bible says clearly that there's going to be trees. There's going to be leafy green plants. And the leafy green plants will be food for you. And they will be healing. They're to be medicine. Oh, and what was the serpent in the garden sentenced to? He was sentenced to eating dust, right? So what was eating dust for the serpent? Okay, let's brainstorm a little bit. What was man created from? Dust. What does he go to? Dust. Does that mean the serpent is sentenced to eating men? It's kind of a weird deal. I don't know if I consider that a sentence. I mean, I consider that a license. I consider that an indulgence that shouldn't happen. Cannibalism. Cannibal. Cain. Baal. Cannibal. Cain worshipped Baal. It's interesting how the language works, folks, isn't it? I hope you're getting this. I hope you're picking this up. Look, I'm just giving this lesson. I'm not quite receiving it. Or am I? Yeah. If you want to master a subject, you teach it. So yes, I'm getting trained up as I'm training you. I had a dream a long time ago. Cat in a motorcycle jacket. Tattooed up. Not somebody I would generally hang out with. You know, kind of afraid of those guys. Don't know what to expect from them. Don't know what to make. And this young fellow in the motorcycle jacket, and it was short cropped to his waist. It wasn't a long coat. Blue jeans on. He told me, the others thought we had lost you. But I told them that I knew you better than that. That we knew you better than that. You went deep into enemy territory and we thought we had lost you. But I knew better than that. Because you had trained me. And I asked him a question. I asked him a question about this odd-looking cross. His tattoo on his torso. And I pointed that out. And he says, oh, that. People get upset when I tell them what it means. And he told me, it's the asshole of a spirit. And that was one of my excursions that I found informing. I guess it depends upon which end of that cross you stand. It might be going clockwise or counterclockwise. But if you're on this side of it, it's going one way. If you're on the other side of it, it's going the other way. Which side are you on? Which side am I on? These are important questions. I pray to Yahweh, Creator, Father, I'm on the right side. I sometimes wonder. I think about those things that I grew up with and those different fads that we thought we were inventing. Did we really invent those? Or were those handed to us? Was that part of a psyop? Handed to us? We thought we were doing things neat and cool. Oh, especially the counter-revolution, the drug revolution. Who gave that to us? Who brought that to us? Who brings those drugs into the country in massive quantities, using huge airplanes, flying into Mina, flying into Florida, flying into Arizona? What was the French Connection? What was that about? That movie reveals some stuff to us, folks. Like all these movies, there's a little bit of truth in there. There's also a lot of propaganda, a lot of lies. No wonder we can't separate truth from fiction. No wonder we don't know the reality. No wonder we need a reality check. No wonder we're confused. No wonder we're mesmerized. No wonder we're enchanted. No wonder we're deceived. No wonder all the world is deceived. And at this point, the secrets are going to be revealed. You got to hold on to your britches, hold tight and fast. And I'm talking to myself too. This is advice for me as well, because this stuff that's going to be revealed is going to shake us all up. Just relax about it. As far as Antarctica goes and that ice shelf collapsing, hey, don't worry, folks. That thing clears of ice regularly. As a matter of fact, we've got evidence. We have evidence from a map from a cartographer. It was published in about 1500. Now, how the hell do you map out the land there if it's covered in ice without incredible scientific instruments, which we didn't have then? You don't. In other words, it was clear. And by the way, the scientists get a lot of things wrong. We used to think there were only 54 volcanoes in Antarctica. Now we find out there's like 101 more, a bunch of new ones. Antarctica reminds me of the Book of Enoch and the mountains described there. 7 mountains. Rome was founded on 7 hills. There's a lot of parallelism, don't you think? What is it that the world is trying to tell us? What is it the rocks are trying to tell us? Did not Yeshua say on Palm Sunday that if his followers didn't scream out for joy, that the rocks, the very rocks, would speak up and talk? And the Navajo, the Dene, the Sweat Lodge, when they gave blessings, they prayed. And they were thankful and grateful for the fire. the water of life, and their grandmothers and grandfathers, the rocks. Did you understand that this whole earth is holy? It's all been sanctified? Do you realize that those layers upon layers upon layers in the rocks, those beautiful folds in the rocks, don't you realize that that's the geological record? Each one of those is a time when we went around the galaxy, not merely around the sun. Yes, God's time is different, completely different. Yes, it's a giant clock. The universe is like a clockwork, and there are some great mysteries to it, and we're going to discover some of them. What's the oldest book in the Bible? And when was it actually written? Might it have been written at a previous Earth age and come down to us from that? Could be. By the way, that would be the book of Job, with all of those references to constellations and to the dragons, the dinosaurs, rather. And of course, to another one that I don't really want to get into today, Leviathan. You have to understand these are symbols, folks. Sure, they're about a real big monster in the water, but there's also a monster of water. So we're going to get into it now. As I said, those of you who stick around and watch to the end, you get special blessings, and I do too. There's a band of water at the equator of the earth, and it's actually 400 or 500 feet above sea level. So as the earth rotates, this band of water is held at the equator. And when the earth stops rotating, what do you think happens? Well, you got 400 or 500 feet of water. Doesn't it seek to go to level? Folks, some of the greatest tides in the world, right out of Anchorage, Alaska, right at home. I think the differential is 32, 33, 35 feet between high tide and low tide. There's places in which we've got really high tides and really low tides. Other places where the tides don't change much. The water stays the same level. When the earth slows down or speeds up in its rotation, and it is speeding up, that band of water changes along with it. And if the earth was to suddenly stop, those waters would continue with their momentum and would slosh forward. The problem is that at some point they slosh backwards. But what happens when it stops is that the water goes from the equator north and south. Okay, you got that? So the water goes up and it goes down. So it washes over the face of the earth. You might consider it a giant baptism. The earth was designed to replenish itself, to recycle itself. We've screwed this place up before. We've waged all kinds of war. Read in the Bible, you'll see clearly weapons used, which, by the way, they exist today, but they're keeping that stuff secret from us now. But you had one city hitting another city with a beam of light, a weapon, destroying that city. And you have that city that did the destruction leaving the earth completely. I guess they had great remorse. They didn't feel too good about themselves for killing their brothers, other beings. Folks, not everybody on earth is your brother. But in a certain sense, We are all joined, even with this earth. You've heard of cellular memory? Well, the memory may even go tinier than that. The earth did stand still. There have been some incredible floods and waters. What's that story about the Reed Sea? We say the Red Sea, but it was the Reed Sea and the waters that buried Pharaoh's army. See, folks, all of this stuff was set up in advance. The Maker set all of this stuff up in this giant clock that we're riding on. That's what it is. And you and I are coming through a period, a section of the galaxy that's got a little bit more dust in it. And the Earth is going to be growing in size. And the sun is going to be getting attacked by this dust as well. And it's going to be getting irritated, and it's going to do something that we all don't like. But the people before us left records. They left it in stone. They painted, they carved in stone. They told us what's coming, what's going to happen. We're going to have plasma storms. We're not just going to have regular storms. We're going to have incredible winds. Some places will have no winds. We're going to have floods. We've had mud floods too. Sometimes when these things occur, there's an instant freeze. I don't know what Yahweh has in mind for us right now. Some of you out there have gotten some ideas from what I've just said. I wish you would speak up and let the rest of us know what you know. The tree of knowledge of good and evil. Are we all attached to that somehow? What is that analogy for? The tree of life. Folks, I got deep into this, kind of off into the weeds. I know that some of you are maybe a little bit mesmerized by this, and I apologize. I don't mean to be putting you into trances. But yet I'm here to deliver messages. And I don't always understand the messages, by the way. I do my best. So you've got some of my advanced thinking and reasoning. It might be off the planet, might be off the charts, it might be something you've never heard of or imagined before. But in this case, we're all in for one heck of a ride, whatever it is. Now, the bad guys that run the planet, the devils, they've got advanced warning and they have a good idea what's coming, but they don't know everything. During this time, with this extra radiation, we mere mortal men may actually be growing. We may be activating. I had a friend try to tell me about this a few years ago, and I did my best to get the message. She's out there. Kind of like to go to Kansas again. You got to be careful about liberal Kansas, though, I'll tell you that, because the winds are always blowing. It's a strong headwind. It's great if you're going from west to east. Man, you can ride that tailwind and probably pick up another 4 miles to the gallon in my rig. I think I'll try it this next time. See what my mileage is. I definitely don't want to drive back from the east going west through liberal Kansas. Mom, I miss you. Thanks for the training. maybe it's true that we've all been here before. Siri Singh Saab was critical of me because I spent too much time in the ethers. A lot of you folks who want out of body experiences don't seem to understand the dangers involved. It does appear you have to go through some layers and levels that aren't very nice and pleasant. I've been through those, and I've been to some others as well. I'll try to get these things out there for you. My mother passed away, and I guess I really haven't quite processed it. And Mom was kind of rough on me as well, so it's kind of a mixed thing. But there were things that she told me and taught me that just to come into light, and other friends of the family told me and reminded me, and one of those things came to mind right now. I hope you don't mind, but I'd like to have a private moment right